What's up, everybody? I realized that I totally forgot to record an intro for this episode prior to packing up everything. And so my microphone's packed up. I'm packing up the computer tonight, but really excited for this episode. And just quick introduction for Wyatt. Wyatt Burrows, he is currently an assistant with the U17 Samoan women's national team. He's also an assistant with Eastern Kentucky University. Yeah, I've known him for just a little bit. He was in the running for an assistant at Saracoso, and unfortunately things didn't work out. But great guy, really good coach, and really excited for this episode. But yeah, I just wanted to get this recorded before I get the computer packed away, and I don't have access to all of this for a couple weeks as we're doing the move. But yeah, looking forward to the episode. Hope you guys enjoy it, and we will see you again soon.
All right, Wyatt, how are we doing?
I'm good, man. It's prime
Good.
recruiting season, so
Oh,
working
love it.
the time, but you know how
Yep.
it is.
Oh, yeah, you're always working overtime.
Part-time is full-time, full-time's overtime. So
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. So for my listeners, real quick, just the three or four that I have, this is Wyatt Burrows, currently the assistant, and correct me if I'm wrong, but assistant coach at Eastern Kentucky, right? And also assistant coach for the Samoan U17 national team. Is that right?
yeah, the women's national team, yeah.
Okay, that's very, very cool. So if we could just kind of jump into it, the first question I wanted to talk with you, because so for everyone else's information, Wyatt and I had connected a while back when I was looking for an assistant out at Saracoso, and things didn't work out with that, but a connection that I'm grateful to have. So I do remember that when we were talking, that your background was a little bit like different than the typical coach background and all that. And I wanted to know if you would dive into that a little bit more. And if I remember correctly, you were more rugby and less soccer, right? So yeah, talk to us about that and kind of how you got into the coaching game instead.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born and raised in Baltimore, and
Okay.
my family was strictly basketball. I played basketball,
Sure.
football, baseball growing up. That was just like the way that my family has functioned, and everybody in my family sort of went along that sort of path of being multi-sport athletes with those. But my dad's coached basketball for about 35 years. My brother played
Cool.
college football. And my big sport growing up was baseball, was the one that I was best
Okay.
at. I never really took it too seriously. It was one of those things I said that I wanted to play college, but I really didn't. I really didn't care. So by the time I graduated high school, I moved down to Florida for college. I was coaching high school soccer because I was always passionate about soccer. It was just something to where my family that doesn't exist, or like it wasn't even an option for me to do that.
Sure.
So that was my opportunity to sort of begin to step into that space. So I got a job as an assistant at a high school while I was playing rugby at Florida Tech, which, mind you, I had no idea how rugby was played. I showed up one day and they're like, "Oh, you're somewhat tall. You can run. You can kick the ball decently well. So we're going to just sort of walk you through it." So I played, mind you, I didn't only play at Florida Tech. There was a semi-professional team in that area, and the people who sort of operated Florida Tech rugby were like, "Oh, you should go and try that." So I played God knows how many games, not knowing the intricacies of the rules. It was hilarious, but that's a tangent. That was sort of my in towards the soccer aspect of it. Was I was coaching high school. Wasn't able to finish school. I moved back home, and it was a weird sort of intermediary period in my life where I didn't have a career at that point. I dropped out of school. I was like, I kind of want to take this as far as I can. I kind of want to go down the path and see where it takes me. And I got a job coaching high school again. And then immediately, almost snap of the finger, got a job coaching JUCO. And then again, snap of the finger, almost immediately got a job as the head of performance analysis at DC Power. So I went essentially skipping 60 rungs of the ladder and got my way up to that point. And from there, it just sort of took off down the analysis route and then eventually the coaching route. So
Sure. I love that. So yeah, talk to me a little bit more then about, so like I don't have US soccer certification, right? Like I have like the grassroots and like the free ones. I did the free ones, right? Because it looks good on a resume, but I have a lot of beef with US soccer, which again, that's another whole nother episode. But so for you, like dropping out of school, because I'm sure eventually someone's going to listen to this who's like, well, do I want to go to school or do I want to go into a career field, whether that's playing or coaching or admin or media or whatever it might be? How has that kind of played out? Like, is it something where you think about going back to school, or at this point you're just kind of like, I'm in it now?
Well, I'm in a bit of a weird spot because of that very reason, because I don't have my college degree, which makes it very difficult to work full time in the college side of things. But then again,
sure.
I'm going to keep it PG and say that I have my own problems with US soccer, to where I'm really, I can't really be asked to sit through the licenses and go through that whole side of it. I have my licenses down the UEFA and down the OFC pathways, but the way that the NFL is moving, they're trying to steer away from foreign licenses and they're trying to hyper focus on those US licenses. So I don't think that that's going to be a viable option either until I get those. So I think that this is a pivotal time in my career because I want to make the decision as to where I want to focus, at least in like the more full-time stuff. Like if it's going to be college, I'm going to have to go back to school. And that's going to be a financial commitment on my end. If I want to get back into working professionally again, which is, something that I'm always open to, then it might mean I have to go suck it up and go get my B license. So,
right. Yeah, no, for sure. So again, with that, kind of, can you dive into like why the analytics side? So for me, growing up playing the game, and what times that we've talked, we know that you're much more of the analytical guy, right, than I am. I'm more of the like play the feel of the game, right? And that's kind of my coaching style is in the game. What appealed to you about the analytics side and made you want to pursue that more?
You can just be upfront and say I'm weird, Joe. I'm not going to take any offense.
No, I'm weird. I talk about feelings during games. I'm weird, man.
So I think that my background allows for that sort of outside looking in objective perspective on certain things. And that's been something where, especially earlier on in my career, I would come up with certain ideas that they weren't necessarily odd, but it's like, you can tell that I hadn't been out there because when you play, there's a certain emotion that's attached to it.
Yep.
There's a sense of like pulling from your previous experiences to then relay that onto others. I didn't have that. So for me, it was just more so the X's and O's or the math behind it, where it's, hey, this is my observation. This is what I think. This is the reason why I think it. And it's just sort of culminated into learning and pulling from different managers' game models that I've worked under and developing my own fundamental understanding as to how the game is played, to where now that I have that baseline and that sort of hands-on experience within those different environments, now it's essentially identical to somebody who has played being able to relay those things. So it's interesting. It started with me not being afraid to be wrong. And it was a very uncomfortable time in my career because obviously, I mean, if you don't play, like I'm not going to go into a, NASA HQ and try to tell them how to fly a rocket, but if I do, I'm going to get yelled at. But if somebody is like, oh, that's not how you're supposed to do it, this is how you're supposed to do it, I might learn a thing or two. And if I get yelled at by enough more important people who are more important than I am, then I might, ultimately get to where I'm trying to go. So,
yeah, I love that. Can you dive into that a little bit more? Just like the being willing to be wrong. I think that's something, and to go way back to the beginning of the episode, I didn't actually talk about like the podcast and everything. So what I'm trying to do really is get more exposure for kids and have opportunities for kids to hear from coaches at all sorts of levels, and men's and women's. And that, what you said, I think is huge. And I think is something that is really, really lacking. And I might catch a lot of crap for this. I don't know. I don't care. It's my podcast, right? But I think that's something that's lacking a lot in the youth game right now.
Mhm.
And we even talked about it when we met up at Fest, just seeing the kids that are playing club, and they're not wrong. They're never wrong. They're never wrong about anything. So how has that kind of influenced your ability to continue working, and why is it so important?
It doesn't matter what you do or who you are. When you do something for the first time, you're not going to be great at it. It's going to take a lot of sort of building yourself up within that space, and that requires trusting yourself or being comfortable enough making decisions that ultimately could be wrong and accepting the consequences of them, but moving forward to where you don't make the same mistake twice. Yeah, and that's something that I have a feeling that the way that my generation and the generation sort of forming after me is going is they want to detach themselves from any feeling associated with discomfort, or I'm not doing something well, because I want to constantly be in control. And they'll spin that narrative, or they'll approach certain situations with that sort of sense of, I'm going to do it because I want to do it, as opposed to I'm going to do it because it needs to be done. If you want to grow, especially within this game, I mean, it's ruthless. It's so unbelievably demanding to where you don't really have a choice but to suck it up and sort of do the things that need to be done. The beginning of my career, I spent the first, X amount of months, I was just picking up cones. I was just getting yelled at like I was an intern, because I practically was an intern. Wasn't getting college credit for it, though, I'll tell you that much. So I'm going around, picking up cones. They'll send me out there to move goals by myself and whatnot. But just the opportunity to be a couple 100 feet or 100 yards closer to the action and being able to hear certain things, being able to see certain things, putting yourself in that environment where it sucks. But after X amount of time, when you learn something, you might be able to step into a more important space to where, you're making a little bit more money, or you're just making money, period, in my case. But you're around people who are going to continue to, invest in you and progress you further down the pathway that you're on. So I think that when you understand that those feelings associated with failure and with discomfort are a very temporary sort of place, you understand, and when you understand that that's what's best for you in the moment in terms of your growth and your development, that's when you learn how to sort of formulate a positive relationship with those feelings. So it's less, this sucks. I hate this. I don't like the way that it makes me feel. I don't think that this is what's best for me in the moment. But down the line, you start to, you've been in that position X amount of times, and you're like, I'm just going to power through it because I know that there's going to be greener pastures on the other side. So.
Oh man, that's brilliant. Love that. Yeah, it's huge. We actually just on Sunday we went to church, and one of the discussions in Sunday school, we were talking about like enduring and pushing through all the bad things, and I had the thought that like typically when people talk about like you got to endure through life, right? They'll say that, right? Like you got to endure through life, and what they're not saying is you got to endure just the bad stuff. Right? You got to endure the bad stuff so you can get to the good stuff. And then another thing that I see youth, and it drives me nuts, right? Is as soon as something good starts happening, that's when they get lazy. Is they work hard, and I see it with college athletes all the time. So they work really hard, they do really good. Maybe like they set a PR in something, and then they like take an easy week. And I'm like, why? Why? So like you were saying, experiencing those negative feelings and those bad feelings and pushing through those and knowing, I think you said the greener pasture idea, right? There's always greener pastures on the other side, and you just got to work to them. I love that. So another aspect of the podcast is, I am a very religious person. And one of the things I'm trying to do is kind of blend, not necessarily blend, but have that influence of religion on my podcast, in my life, and with the kids that I'm hoping to connect with and eventually interview some kids and get them on here. How has religion and your faith, right? Maybe not necessarily even organized religion, but your faith, how has that played a role in all of this? And how have you been able to find ways to balance, your morals and your faith and balancing that with this job and this career?
Yeah. And I love that question for a multitude of reasons. But the reason why I love it is because it's very easy when you watch from the outside looking in these professional players on TV, or like the World Cup comes around and you're watching these matches. It's very easy to forget that they're human and they're people and they feel certain things and they have relationships with their families the same way that you do. And they, go through the same struggle of paying bills ultimately, even though their bank accounts look a lot different. But I say that to say it's very easy to, when you're in those environments, then in whatever role it might be, to approach it through a sense of you have to be perfect. You can't make mistakes because there's so much on the line. And it's very easy for the pressure to get to you. And as a manager, when you're managing egos, you're managing emotions, and you have to think about all the emotionally charged variables on the outside of the clubhouse and all of that stuff happening, it's very easy to forget about the individual as a human. And the one thing that I think that my faith has brought into my career that has helped me, and it's been something that I've had mentors that I've been fortunate enough to have around me that have pushed me to sort of believe the same thing. It's humility. I mean, it's trying to approach the difficulties and the ruthlessness of my job as Christ-like as possible, and try to, just act justly, love mercy, walk humbly in essentially any facet of my job. And the reason why I feel as though that's important is because if I'm a student athlete, it's a very different dynamic when I have somebody who is building the pressure on and is constantly pushing me to be perfect, as opposed to just loving me for who I am. Like they recruited me, they brought me in here. Ultimately, I'm a firm believer in God's going to provide in any facet of that. Like if I'm financially, I'm feeling that that everything's going to work out in the end. But also, if I'm a student athlete and I go somewhere, it might not be going the way that I intended. Then if I am embodying those values as their mentor or the person in charge, then hopefully that's going to trickle down and we're all going to have that same collective sort of concept that, ultimately God's going to provide. So,
yeah, no, I love that. And I'm going to ask, and if you don't want to answer, that's okay. I can edit this bit out or have there been any moments that you can think of specifically, right? You're also a little bit younger than me, right? So the last guy I had on was around my age. You're a little bit closer to this coming up generation. Have there been moments in this time of your career where your faith has been able to really pick you up and pull you out of maybe a tough place, or like you were saying, God provides several times? And I believe that too, 100%. But are there specific moments that you can think of that you'd also be willing to share that maybe can give these kids more specific examples?
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, I have coaching collegiately or coaching professionally. I've never had a full-time job. So at the beginning, I'm serious. When I haven't, right at the beginning, back when I was still practically an intern and I wasn't being paid, I mean, I would sleep in my car. I'd sleep on floors. Like it was difficult. Like I'd sleep in the office if I was fortunate enough to have one. And like I said, like pushing through those things, knowing that there's something better on the other side. A sort of sentiment that I've always had was, if God wants to make somebody powerful, he's not going to crown him first. He's going to break him. Like he's in a situation that is so unbearable to where you have no choice but to either quit or you're going to learn a lot about yourself.
Oh my gosh.
Sort of introspection. You can figure out, like I said, how to have a positive relationship with all the things around you that you're going to start to understand that it's what's best for you.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that a lot. That will be getting clipped several times. That's awesome. I love that mindset and that thought process. Um, yeah, thank you. I think that one of the other things that with this podcast and the ideas I have behind it is, I think a lot of times faith and religion gets overshrouded by athletics,
Mhm.
and it's still there, right? But it's not something that we talk about a lot. And there's been stigmas for years about, like, well, you can't push religion, and you don't have to push religion to be like faithful and to be a positive person and an influence. So I appreciate all of that. That was fantastic. I wanted to ask, so what are some of the like similarities, some of the biggest similarities and biggest differences that you've been able to see at the various levels you've coached, right? Because you said you started in high school, you've coached club, now you're coaching in college, coached international, and not necessarily one of the biggest international teams, but like international is international football. Like it's the big deal.
Mhm.
So what are some of the biggest similarities and differences you've seen from all those levels?
I mean, the differences are the obvious, like
Sure.
technical baseline,
Yeah.
you know, tactical IQ in terms of like understanding in regards to how the game is played, might be approach at those younger ages when you're coaching club or if you're coaching high school. There's not the demand or the pressure to where I'm going to have to approach this a certain way to get a desired outcome, unless you're really driven to like get to that point where you're playing collegiately or you're playing professionally or whatnot. And there are those that sort of move in from those lower level environments when they're younger.
Yeah. Yeah.
The similarity or the thing across the board that I find is consistent is, at the end of the day, the players as individuals, they just want to be understood. They just want to be a part of something, and it's our job as management to curate an environment to where everybody has their individual roles, regardless of technical baseline, regardless of those other factors. Obviously, the higher up you go, the skill gap's going to close, but
Sure.
the dynamic of the team, and that's why culture is so important. It's because ultimately, them as human beings, everybody just wants to be cared about. Everybody
Yeah.
wants to have that feeling where my coach is thinking of me when he's making this decision. Even if it doesn't go my way, I know that the culture that we've curated is positive to the point where, I'm on the losing end of this deal, but I understand that it's what's best.
Right.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so I think that sort of sentiment is consistent across the board. Like with the younger kids, like I've been a part of teams where I've done very poorly in terms of curating that type of environment, and it shows. But there's also, I think that if you have an under 13s group, if you do it well, then that sort of dynamic is going to be the same, regardless of if you're coaching collegiately, if you're coaching professionally. That sort of culture, it doesn't change dynamic wise from the really young ages all the way up. It's more so you really see the differences when you don't have that.
Yeah. Yeah, the roots are there, but yeah, that's I like that too. It's easier to see when it's not there than when it is there. That's good. Um, do you prefer coaching club nationally or in college? Which has been your favorite?
Whoa.
I got to be honest, and I'm going to send this to every coach you've worked with.
I mean, I think that the big one that I've enjoyed the most, I mean, coaching internationally is just
Yeah.
I can't think of a comparable experience because it's such a different dynamic in terms of, I mean, you're constantly traveling somewhere new.
Sure.
The training environment within the camp, it's more so reactive because you're not going to have time to do a 6-week. You know what I mean?
That's
So
true.
it's more so like it's a very different approach across the board. And the thing that I liked about it is in a club environment. So like for example with DC, I would show up to the office in the morning. Everybody would come in. We'd have a meeting. We'd have meetings with players, whatnot. We go out and we'd train. We'd debrief after, and then we'd go home. So there was that sense of you come in, you lock onto it, you detach, then you go home and you just sort of do your own thing. When you're in camp, it's 24/7 because you're surrounded by these people for X amount of time. And when you enjoy the people that you are around, it makes the dynamic of that environment so easy. And I'm not saying that I haven't enjoyed people that I've been around in a club environment or a collegiate environment or whatever.
Sure.
There's that sense of the social aspect of it. It's almost like going on a recruiting trip when you're coaching college. You know what I mean? Like you're when you're sitting on the touchline and you're watching these games, and then you go back to the hotel or you go out to a restaurant or something and you're still around these people. It's very similar to that, to where if you have people around you that you really like and you guys work well as a staff dynamic or whatnot, it's so fun. We went to Dallas Cup in and nice. Because we had our U17s play in Dallas Cup, just to sort of get a view of some of those girls before they go to Solomon Islands for World Cup qualifiers in September. But it's not Paris. It's not some of these.
Dallas.
Well, I mean, no, it's Dallas. I'm just saying it's not like a really high end event in terms of like it's not the World Cup. It's not a World Cup qualifier or whatnot. But it was, apart from the World Cup, probably the most fun I've ever had going on a trip with a staff.
That's awesome.
Ultimately, just the people that I was around and us being able to, just make the most of the time that we had. So, I would say it's coaching international.
Yeah, no, it sounds amazing. That's something that I always have really enjoyed with staffs and at various levels. It really is about who you're around. That's a good point. So with that being said, how, and maybe you don't, maybe you do, I don't know, but at EKU now, how do you guys go about trying to foster an environment and a culture similar to that, like mindset, as far as like how close you are, right? Obviously, like you said, college international is totally different.
Yeah.
But when it comes to culture and building that and establishing that in those relationships, how do you guys go about doing that at EKU?
And it's funny that you say that. I think that Matt from EKU and Juan from Samoa are very similar leaders in terms of it, like how their dynamic is with their staff and whatnot. Like the national team, love the dynamic that we have. We've all figured out how we each fit into the puzzle, and budget wise, we're not going to have as much as, the US or some of these federations that can just shell over money for staff. We had to be very selective with how we allocate resources, but we've done Juan has done a phenomenal job in terms of putting everything together, and it's phenomenal. At EKU, obviously, coaching in a collegiate environment, you can only have 4. So the 4 that he has are like myself, and then we have Darius, the associate head coach, and Tatum, who's another one of the assistant coaches who does more of our like operations stuff. Within our respective roles, the way that we approach sort of the 4-person restriction is we'll dip our hands into different things, and just sort of it's more so there's 4 of us doing a collective job. And Matt does a very good job of delegating certain things to certain people at certain times. It's not solely Wyatt, you're going to go and do this. Tatum, you're going to go and do this. Darius, you're going to do this. And those are the only things we're doing. We're in this together. And I think that he, in terms of curating that culture, does a very good job of letting us know that he's there for us in terms of he's willing to get into just the same as we are. That translates to the players as well. Like that positive dynamic, when they see that the staff has a very healthy collaborative dynamic, then obviously it's very easy for the players to have that trickle down effect. And I think that it's interesting, the dichotomy between both of those environments, how similar the leadership styles are and how that directly translates to, a positive result, both in terms of maintaining a positive culture, but also success on the pitch as well.
No. I love that. If you could go into a little bit, because you're coaching women now, or I guess you've been coaching women, and then when you were with DC, that was women, right? The club teams are the only boys you've coached, right? Or was it at JUCO were you coaching the men's team?
I had both the men and the women when I was coaching JUCO.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I've coached women twice. So I coached women in JUCO, and then I had a co-ed program in high school. I want to make sure I word this the right way. How do you guys emphasize because another really big emphasis, at least for me, and that I've seen is happening more, which I'm grateful for, is like the mental health aspect of collegiate
Mhm.
athletics. How do you kind of bridge the gap where, so you have three men on staff, right?
Mhm.
So how do you guys make sure that the women in your program, they know like, hey, if something's going on, you can approach us, you can talk to us, because I think there's a lot of stigmas as well about like, oh well, when men are coaching women, there's a disconnect, and but we have to get through that. We have to break that down, and there has to be that connection there. How do you guys go about doing that and making sure that the mental health of your athletes is
Mhm.
as healthy as it can be?
Yeah, absolutely. We really rely on the leadership group for some of
Mm,
that, and we have a very good relationship with the leaders within our program to where they're comfortable stepping into that space and having those conversations. But Tatum,
love that.
the female that we have on staff, also
Mhm.
does a really, really good job of making herself available for those conversations as well. Because,
Sure.
I mean, I understand the sentiment where it's, I'm an 18, 19-year-old girl with issues, regardless of what the issues might be. I'm going to be hesitant to step into essentially my boss's office and
Right.
inconvenience him with whatever I have going on, even though that's our job, right? Our
Right.
job
Right.
is professionally inconvenienced by you. So
Yep.
we try to make ourselves as available as possible and have those conversations. But like you're absolutely correct that there is a sort of sentiment or a stigma behind some of these things, and there's only so much that we can do ourselves to try to break that or try to change that feeling. But the ways that we get around it to ensure that our student athletes are getting what they need is we rely on the leadership group to have a lot of those conversations, and we have a very good communicative relationship with them, but also just finding ways to ensure that they understand the resources that they have. Like there is a female on staff for you to approach for some of those things. We have really, really good resources on campus at EKU for those more
Cool.
like intricate situations as well. So,
Sure. Yep. That's awesome. That's
mhm.
awesome.
And
I've seen a lot of schools that are starting to do that. I interrupted you. Go ahead.
no, it's okay. And in general, there is something to be said, and I don't know if this was the route that you were going down, and I hope that I approached this in the right way. But when there's people who coach men for X amount of time and they make the jump to coaching within the women's game, it's something and it's a completely different conversation in regards to stigma because it's not necessarily discussed or addressed in the men's game, the sort of mental health battle. But
Yeah.
the difference that I found coaching both of them, it's the men's players are so fixated on the message to where they don't really care how it's conveyed. So if I
Mhm.
wanted to give you some instruction, I could just tell you, hey, Joe, this is what I need from you.
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
And you're hyper fixated on the information that was relayed. On the other side of it, what I found coaching women as opposed to men is there's the message, but the underlying tone in which the message is conveyed is going to dictate your response to whatever it is I say.
Yeah.
So if I approach a conversation that way, the tone is, I'm angry at you. Or
Yep.
it's, hey, this is urgent. I need you to do this now. And then that's going to, it's a very anxious sort of environment. Whereas it's, hey, Joe, would you mind doing this next time? Or Joe, could you do this for me, please? It's all about how you approach the conversation.
Yep. Yep.
So I think that some of the issues that trickle down from the staff, obviously there's a lot more complex things that happen behind the scenes. But I think that
Sure.
when you transition from coaching men to coaching women, really understanding the psychology of the players and getting to understand them as people and what they respond to and sort of what that line looks like. And that line should never be crossed. So I think that once you understand them as people, then you can really understand how to get the most out of them in a healthy way, as
Yep.
opposed to pushing that boundary and overstepping that line. Because once you break that sort of trust of psychological safety, then it's very difficult to get that back if you're able to get that
Oh
back.
yeah. Yeah. No, that's perfect. I think I like the emphasis again there at the end of understanding them as a person first. When I was at Lincoln Trail, that was evident with me real quick with our women's program. We had our men's program was completely international. We didn't have a single guy from the States. The women's was about half and half. And it was interesting to see, and I don't want to like talk down or talk poorly about US women's soccer, because obviously we have a very good structure. But the mannerisms and the tone and the discussions were completely different with the US girls and the international girls. And I remember after a game, it was after a loss, we had this little group of Brazilian girls, and they like walked away from the team, went to the end of the bench, were like, they weren't like throwing stuff, but they were huffy, you know?
Yeah.
And so I went over and was like, what's going on? Because I have a very calm approach, especially when it comes to female players. And I was like, what's going on? And one of them like smacked me on the arm, and she was like, you guys need to yell at us. And I was like, what? But it's just totally different dynamic. That, like you said, we have to know the people first. I didn't know them as people, right? So my brain was saying I have to be more calm, I have to be more composed all the time. And then there's these little group of Brazilian fireheads who were like, you got to get into it, you got to have passion and all this. And I did. And the rest of the season, that's how I was with them, and they were incredible. But yeah, getting to know the people is absolutely vital with that. I love that. Those are good answers again. Well, last question that I have for you is, how has the experience been doing all of this in such a short amount of time? Because your career at this point is like 6 years.
I don't even think
more.
I think it's
a little
been
less.
Yeah,
like
so
5.
Yeah, like 4.5, 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So all of this experience, all of these different teams you've worked for and organizations and places you've lived and traveled, and how has that been, having all of that happen in such a condensed period of time?
Hectic, but fulfilling. I think, I'm very fortunate to have had the experiences that I've had. And I feel as though obviously my best coaching years are far ahead of me, but I understand that there are, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who would die for some of the experiences that I've had. And I'm very grateful for them. And they've been fantastic learning opportunities for me in my development. But, obviously there is no endpoint to learning or to growth or development. It's just constantly being a sponge and, picking up on some of those new experiences and whatnot, putting your ego aside and being able to listen to other people and, learn something from everybody that you meet is really pivotal in those sort of situations.
Yeah. So do you like the hectic life, or are you kind of hoping maybe it eases up a little bit here and you can kind of settle and continue to learn and grow and progress? Or are you still, are you looking for every opportunity you can to just kind of pile on top of each other?
I'm comfortable living that sort of lifestyle, but I do understand that it's going to get to a point where, like, when you're trying to start a family, when you're trying to, actually settle down and live life, that you're going to have to compromise and put some of those things aside. And it's worth noting that your life is meant to be enjoyed as well.
Yeah.
And if you're constantly pushing to, be better and grow and optimize every aspect of you being better at whatever your job is or whatever it is you do, at some point you're going to sprint past the things that actually matter. And the little experiences that you have with the people around you, like the random Tuesday nights after training, like instead of staying home late in the office, you come home, you spend time with your family. Those are the moments that actually make up your life. Right. Yeah. So
I love it. Yeah, that's in a nutshell. That's why I am stepping away and we're moving. That's for me. I sprinted so far past that now I'm backtracking and realizing, like, oh no, I need to get off the track for a little bit, and I gotta do that family time. I love that. Yeah, you live a crazy busy life, man. I don't know many people that are as busy as you when it comes to coaching and all of that. So massive props to you for that. I said that was the last question. That was a lie. I do want to get your take, and I don't want to keep you for too long, but
No, dude, you're good.
and you also mentioned some beef, which I totally understand. What are your initial thoughts on the roster? Because it was again officially announced today, just before we got on, actually. But what are your initial thoughts?
Obviously, Roldan's form is questionable, and a lot of people were thinking about that. I also think that, and again, I can't speak to the technical intricacies or the conversations that happen behind the scenes, because it's very easy to look at this and be like, oh, well, yada yada, I don't agree with this, but how do you know that person didn't go into Pochettino's office and swear him out? You don't know that. You don't know what happened behind the scenes. You don't know if their agent's demanding something ridiculous. But I think that, however, on top of that, promoting Diego Luna in the World Cup promos and the few camps in the lead up to the tournament, I think that leaving him out, I think it's criminal. I think what that guy has done and what he has sacrificed for the national team, not giving him this platform to help him within his own career, whether he doesn't even have to play. I mean, I just think that he's deserved a call up at least.
Yeah.
I think that's ridiculous, but then again, what do I know? I'm just a guy. So.
No, I agree. I think he's up there for me. I think my biggest one for me is Tanner Tessmann.
Yeah, man.
The one that I was like, because I get a lot of crap for this. I'm not a big Tyler Adams fan. I think he has his moments, but I think he's also injury prone. I think that he gets a little bit overrated by our fan base, which again, I'll get a lot of crap for that from anyone who's listening. But Tanner Tessmann has been, form of his life playing in France. And so that was, I think, the biggest one for me. But yeah, Diego too. I'm worried about our back line. I'm worried about our back line, man. In international football, like Tim Ream has been so consistent for so long, but he's also so old now. Like the ponytail's got to go, man. Like you gotta grow up eventually and get that hair taken care of. But man, I don't know. Yeah, I agree with you. I think having Diego in the promos and then like not having him on the roster, it's just unreal. It's unreal.
I can't imagine that happening in any other setting. You know what I mean? It would be the same as like City putting Holland on their, fixture announcement for next season and then selling him like 2 weeks later. You do that. It doesn't happen.
Like even Mbappe, when he was getting ready to go to Madrid, he like got out of all of the PSG promos. It wasn't doing anything. So yeah, that was crazy. But no, I agree with that. My harshest take so far, and I'm not necessarily sold on it, right? But this was my harshest take. When I first saw that roster kind of coming out, I looked at Marissa and I was like, we're going to get grouped in a home soil World Cup. And she was like, what are you talking about? Like I showed her the roster and even she was like, where's Diego? Where's where are these guys? I was like, you don't even know the game and you know they should be there. But yeah, that was my harshest take. I don't think we'll get grouped. I pray we don't get grouped. Man, that'd be terrible. But we'll see. No, anyways, I don't have any other questions. I think this has been great. Very insightful. I lied again. I do. My last question that I ask all my guests is if you could give one piece of advice, because again, this is predominantly I want it to be for youth and teens and kids growing up in the game and in athletics in general. One piece of advice, something simple or complicated, whatever you want, give it to them.
Stop worrying about what might go wrong or what might happen. I think that this generation is moving towards dissociating from anything associated with discomfort or with failure.
Yeah.
But those are the moments in which growth happens.
Mm-hmm.
And people are just unwilling to put themselves in those situations. And when you, like in my case, are willing to like literally go into the mud and lose money doing something just for the experience. It's a dogfight, right? And it's hard. But when you know what needs to be done, a dream that you're not willing to sacrifice and fight for, like that's going to haunt you for the rest of your life if you don't do those things.
Yeah.
And
love that.
Whether it's, good experiences or bad experiences in the moment, the time is ultimately going to pass regardless. And if you can learn anything from me and my experiences with the background that I had, and even in the short time, like you said, the things that I've done, it's that it won't be all that bad, So just putting yourself in the best position to be the best version of yourself and learn from the best people you possibly can, and, formulate relationships. Ultimately, God's going to provide for the rest.
Yep. Oh, yeah, he will. He absolutely will. I love that. Wyatt, thank you for hopping on. It was good to catch up a little bit and talk more. And I even got more of your story than I knew before. I appreciate that. Best of luck with EKU this fall. I'm excited to follow you guys and see how y'all do. When's your next Samoa camp or tournament, or what's next for that?
Yeah, so they have World Cup qualifiers in September.
Okay.
As things stand, my compromise was, while I'm at EKU, I'm going to miss the World Cup qualifiers, and I'm just going to go to the World Cup in October.
Okay.
So I know, I would love to go to the Pacific and go through World Cup qualifiers, qualify again.
Yeah.
But, I figured that the World Cup itself is where I would probably be most needed. So
yeah, that's valid. Okay, cool. So EKU this fall, Samoa October. Awesome. Well, I will be keeping tabs on it for sure. Hopefully some of the listeners will now as well. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate you hopping on, and let's keep in touch. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. It was great to be here.
Yeah. Thanks, Wyatt.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah. Bye-bye.